You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Secretary Marcy to read the notice of public hearings.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Branford, Connecticut hereby gives notice of a public hearing to be held on Thursday, June 3rd, 2021 at 7 p.m. by remote technology as authorized by Executive Orders 7B and 7I to consider the applications listed below. Information regarding how to participate in the public hearings will be provided on the meeting agenda that will be posted on the town's website at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. 1. Application number 21-4.8, special exception for grading, section 6.8, for the construction of a single-family home and septic system located at 102 and 104 Stony Creek Road. DiMartino Development and Construction, LLC, care of Dominic DiMartino, applicant and owner. Item number 2, application number 21-5.8, special exception for an oversized accessory structure, section 3.8.D.5, located at 10 Buena Vista Road, Lazarus and Sargent Architects, care of Stephen Lazarus, applicant, Shirley S. Martin and Alan William, owners. Item number 3, application number 21-5.7, special exception for an accessory apartment located at 18 Wedding Farm Road, Will Brierly, applicant, Allison H. Brierly, owner. At said hearings, all persons will have the right to be heard. A copy of the application materials will be made available at least 24 hours ahead of the meeting at https://www.dropbox.com/home/planning %20 %26 %20 zoning under the folder for this particular meeting date. Written communication should be submitted via email to p-z@branford-ct.gov by noon of the day before the meeting for posting at the above Dropbox account associated with the town's website.
Chuck Andrews, Chair. Thank you, Marcy. I will ask, we'll follow our normal format for public hearing. I'll just go over that. And that is that the applicant goes first, makes the presentation. After the applicant is done, we turn it over to the commission and staff. Staff will have a staff report. We'll summarize that for us. We'll have questions, comments from commission members. At that point, we'll open it up to the public. We ask that you identify yourself, and we're going to ask Harry or Evan to explain the process for. And then after we complete the public part, we allow the applicant to respond to any public comments. We may or may not close the public hearing depending on how it goes. And we have a number of matters that are already been opened and continued and may be further continued. With that, Harry or Evan, do you want to, either one of you want to explain the process for the public to participate in the public hearing?
Evan Brining, Assistant Town Planner. I'll take this one. If your computer has a microphone for two-way communication, then during a public hearing, if you wish to speak, press the raise your hand in the participant window. For the governor's executive order, if you speak, you will need to give your name. During public hearings, if you do not wish to speak, you may type your comments into the chat feature. If you're dialing in by phone and you wish to speak during a public hearing, press *9 to raise your hand. And again, if you wish to speak, you'll need to give your name per the governor's order.
Chuck Andrews, Chair. Thank you, Evan. With that, we'll move to our public hearings, where we'll start with items number 1 and 2. That's Stony Creek Estates, 47 Gould Lane, special exception modification for residential open space subdivision and a subdivision modification for the residential open subdivision. This is a matter that we have kept open as a public hearing, mainly to be able to comment and review on proposed conditions of approval. This is regarding some issues regarding possible environmental contamination and the measures being taken to ensure that there is no public harm to the public from that potential happening. With that, is the applicant ready to proceed on that? The applicant here.
Michael DeGioia from Donmar Development. Yes, we are. I believe last meeting we continued in order to prepare some proposed text amendments so that the commission had something concrete to actually consider and make a decision and vote on. I believe that material is in Harry's possession.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Mr. DeGioia. Have you had a chance to review the proposed resolution?
Michael DeGioia, Donmar Development. Yes, we have, and we take no opposition to it.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Mr. DeGioia. Harry, do you want to review the proposed resolutions?
Sure, Harry Smith, Town Planner. Let me share my screen. I'll just walk the commission through them. So you should be able to see a draft resolution for application 2011.3. This is the special exception modification. And just to recap briefly, these applications, as associated application for a modification to the subdivision approval, are modifications to approvals from actually 2014 for applications made in 2013 for this original development, which is an open space residential development. The original approval from then included plans that had restrictions on the construction of several units, including the three subject to these applications, to on-slab construction. The applicant has submitted these applications to allow them to construct these three units, 24, 25, and 26 of Louise Court, as with full basements. I'll get into some of the specifics of that as I go along here, but you may recall we also had an LEP, Tim Carr, who is on a contract with the town, a subject matter expert in attendance at the last session of the public hearing to comment on the applicant's proposal. And I do have a follow-up email from him, but generally in a verbal presentation, my understanding is he basically said that he is satisfied that the application in presentation is accurate based on the presentation that there would be a greater separation between the bottom of the basement floor and the groundwater level. And he also recommended the inclusion of a active ventilation system from the sub-slab area for any potential contamination that might get to that area, just as a fail-safe. And the applicant agreed to that. So you'll see as I go along here is a condition that addresses that. But I did prepare a standard resolution that recites several of the items that have been submitted into the application. Specifically, the letters and attachments from George Andrews, LEP of Lario Associates, who was representing the applicant. There were two letters, one from last fall and an updated revised letter from this past month, May 19th. Information presented in public hearings cited here, all the sessions, including testimonies I mentioned from the town's LEP, Timothy Carr. There was an original inland wetlands permit for this development in 2013, as well as a revised one from 2020. And those permits have been, this application, the changes to it have been reviewed by them, and they have found that they do not require any change to the inland wetland permit from 2020. There's also a staff report from myself, as well as other exhibits entered into the record of the application. I proposed two whereas clauses here, two recitals, specifically to the testimony presented by George Andrews, LEP, regarding the actual ground elevation which he stated was much higher than was indicated on previous plans, and that it now places the construction grade of the basement footings well above the historical elevation of the water table. I also cited additional testimony from him here, based upon the fact that the foundation footings will be bearing on the upper B horizon, which is approximately 6 to 8 inches below the pre-existing grade, and observations recorded by Apis and Young, the applicant's surveyors, further documented throughout the roadway and under building construction activities, defining a natural water table of 8 feet below grade or greater. There should not be any encounters with groundwater at the 3 units that the applicant is requesting to construct basement at 24, 25, and 26. Just stating here, the next whereas is an accompanying subdivision approval modification application. And finally, noting that finding for the commission that with the conditions provided below, the proposed open space residential development will meet all applicable requirements of the Branford zoning regulation. So I did propose here 2 conditions. These were also reviewed by Timothy Carr, the licensed environmental professional contracted with the town. He suggested these penciled in wording changes, which were submitted to the applicant. So these are actually the words that Mr. DeJoy is referring to. It's not just the typed words, it's also the handwritten additions. So the first condition provides for all the conditions from the previous approvals to remain in full force and effect, with the exception of those that might conflict with this proposal for the units identified as 24, 25, and 26, construct them with full basements. And again, with noting that this is augmented by any verbal representations made regarding the elevation of the proposed basement floor above ground level. That was, quite a bit of discussion at the last public hearing. The second condition is where we would be adding the requirement for an active subslab ventilation system as described in verbal testimony presented by licensed environmental professional Timothy Carr and agreed to by the applicant. The proposed third condition could be erased. That was just a placeholder. And that is essentially it. There is identical resolution pretty much for the associated subdivision application. I'm not going to bother going through that, other than the only difference is it cites the special exception modification application rather than the revert. Just so you've seen it, I will put up the email from Timothy Carr. And this essentially reiterates testimony from the public hearing, but I'll pause for a minute and let the commission read it, unless you want me to read it out loud. And just would note that I would be entering this into the record of the application. Actually, both applications. Anybody need any more time, or is?
Thanks, Harry. That's good.
No, understood.
Finally, I did receive a communication from the applicant's attorney, but that is, you've already heard from Mr. DeJoy directly. So I think at this point, I'll stop. If there are any questions, happy to answer them.
Chuck Anderson, sir. Thank you, Harry. Questions from commission members before we open it up to the public? Hearing none, then let's open up to the public. Evan, any member of the public wish to comment? Evan, do you see anyone?
Anyone who would like to participate, please use the raise your hand function next to your name. Evan Browning, Assistant Town Planner. Or you can write into the chat that you would like to participate. I do not see anyone at this time.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Mr. Brining. Mr. DeGioia, do you have any further comments? Looks like you're muted.
He's muted.
Yeah.
Michael DeJoy at Donmar Development. I apologize. I'm using a touchscreen here. I do not. Thank you.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Mr. DeGioia. Any further comments by commission members or staff? Hearing none, then we'll close the public hearing on items number 1 and 2. And this is something that I believe we can take up later on after we complete our public hearing. Thank you, Mr. DeGioia.
Thank you. And thank you, members of the commission.
Thank you. Brings us into item number 3, which is Monowese Development Group. That's the Branford Building Supplies for 14, 16, and 0 Buckley Road, the special exception coastal site plan for an open space residential development. My understanding that the applicant has requested that this matter be continued without testimony to our next meeting, which would be on June 17th. I understand that the DEP had requested some additional time and or some additional time needed to respond to comment. Harry, is that correct?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. Yes, we received an email from Amy Suchins, the applicant's attorney, to that effect.
Great. What we'll do then, I don't know if any members of the public are here on that. What we will do is we were going to continue this to our next hearing on June 17th. If for some reason you can't make June 17th and would like to speak this evening, that's fine too. But again, our recommendation is that we continue this, that you hold your comments to that time to allow to hear the additional presentation and the applicant can actually respond to that. But with that said, is there any member of the public that wishes to comment? Evan, do you see anyone? Again, we are continuing.
Evan Browning, Assistant Town Planner. It looks like somebody had wrote or asked in the chat if the next meeting will be in person, but I believe we are unsure at this time.
Well, I think we have to decide that. If we continue it, we have to say where it's going to be, and we can't just leave it up in the air. I think my understanding is we're probably going to have one more remote meeting, and then we'll decide at our next meeting. By that time, the legislature will be closed, and new laws will be adopted, and we'll decide then. We may not have the option of continuing with remote meetings. It may just be done, and we may have the desire to meet in person. And we're going to talk about that at the end of this meeting. But for right now, I think we have to say where the next meeting will be. And my general understanding is we were going to have one more, and we can have one more remote meeting, and then we will decide at our next meeting, future meetings, how they go. So I guess that's my understanding, that we will continue this as a remote meeting to our June 17th meeting. But with that said, let's hear comments. Any commission members? Is that okay with other commission members?
John Lust here. That's fine with me, Chuck.
Thanks, John.
Fred Russo, fine with me.
Great. Thanks, Fred.
Marcy Paluzzi, fine with me.
Thanks, Marcy.
Massimo Ligori, it's fine with me also.
Great. Thanks, Massimo.
As well with me.
Okay. So then we'll continue this matter to our June 17th public hearing, which will be another Zoom remote meeting as well. So this matter is continued. That brings us then to item number 4, which is DiMartino Development and Construction, 96, 102, 104 Stony Creek Road is special exception for grading. My understanding is that this matter, we had an issue about legal notices, so that we're going to table it and we'll take it up at our next meeting. Harry, is that correct?
Harry Smith, town planner, that's correct. There was one property that was not identified on the application form, so that property did not get into the public hearing notice, so we need to renotice the public hearing and have that done correctly, and so we'll be hoping to reschedule for the next meeting on June 17th.
Okay. So we'll table item number 4. The expectation we'll hear that on the 7th. That brings us into item number 5, which is Lazarus and Sargent. This is 10 Buena Vista Road, a special exception for a one-car garage loft. I guess this is an oversized accessory apartment in Stony Creek at 10 Buena Vista Road. Lazarus and I care of Stephen Lazarus, Shirley Martin, and Alan Williams owner. Is the applicant ready to proceed on that?
Yes, I am. My name is Stephen Lazarus. I'm an architect with Lazarus and Sargent Architects in Wallingford. We're applying for a special exception for the height of, I think I need to clarify, there is an existing one-car garage on the site, which is 308 square feet. The ridge for that one-car garage is currently at 16 foot 4 inches, just above the allowed height. This is to raise that ridge from 16 foot 4 to 19 foot 1, just under 3 feet. And it's not for an accessory apartment. It's for an artist's loft. It's not an apartment. It's not an occupied overnight kind of a use. In fact, when we got a variance for this particular use, it was stipulated that it not be for residential use, that it is very clearly an artist's loft. The very modest increase in the height to 19 foot 1 barely allows us adequate functioning space as a loft. We did everything we could to keep the height of the building as low as we possibly could. Of the 308 square foot footprint, we estimate roughly 150 square feet of space in the loft is actually usable by the resident artist who lives in an adjacent house. And that is the extent of my presentation.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Mr. Lazarus. Evan, I see you've done the staff report for this one. Do you want to summarize that for us?
Sure. Evan Browning, Assistant Town Planner. Like Mr. Lazarus just said, the applicant proposes the addition of a second floor to an existing one-car garage. The existing roof is at 16 feet 4 inches, and they propose to increase that to 19 feet 1 inch. The proposed activity meets the bulk requirements of the R2 district with the exception of the rear lot line and side lot line variances that the applicant received from the ZBA on April 20th. Any accessory structure exceeding 15 feet in height or 750 square feet in coverage requires a special exception by the Planning and Zoning Commission. This proposal would be 19 feet 1 inches in height and therefore requires a special exception. A landscaping plan was not provided by the applicant, but based on the application materials, it appears that the special exception criteria are generally met. The applicant did not appear before the Stony Creek Architectural Review Board. They chose not to review it. For our staff recommendations, we have one finding. Subject to compliance with any conditions, the commission finds based on the testimony and application materials presented that the proposed use of the property is consistent with the special exception criteria per section 9.8 of the zoning regulation.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Evan. Questions from commission members or staff before we open this up to the public? Seeing none, are there any members of the public that would wish to comment? Evan, do you see anyone who would like to comment on this?
I do not see anyone at this time, but anyone that would like to comment, please use the raise your hand function next to your name on the participant list, or you can indicate that you would like to participate in the chat.
One more time, any member of the public wish to comment?
I do not see anyone at this time.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Evan. Mr. Lazarus, do you have any final comments or additional comments?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lazarus. Any further comments from commission members or staff? Hearing none, then we will close this matter as a public hearing, something I think we can take up in a little bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings us then to item number 6, which is Will Brearley. Allison H. Brearley is the owner. 18 Whiting Farm Road, special exception for accessory apartment. Is the applicant ready to proceed on that one? Ready.
Good evening. Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering. I'm representing the Briley's at 18 Whiting Farm Road. What we have here is basically it's an existing accessory apartment that has been there for many, many years. The Briley's bought the property about 7 years ago. Hadn't done anything with the accessory structure where the apartment is. There was a pipe leak, and so had to go in and start tearing things apart to stop the leak and fix it. So in the meantime, while he was doing that, I said, well, this has never been made an official apartment by zoning because it had been there for so long. Soon as while we're doing this, let's put new underground water and power because there was a well to the accessory structure. And knowing that as soon as you try to pull a permit for the power, it's going to go through the various offices in town hall. He says, now's the time. Let's just make it right. So here we are. We've already been to East Shore. They've vetted the existing septic system. We've been to wetlands. They've approved it. The only groundwork is the new utilities. I can share the screen, put the map up just so you get a sense for things. If Harry lets me.
Sorry, Harry Smith, town planner. Let me make you a co-host. Do that.
There we go. So this is Whiting Farm Road on the right. This is the main house. It's approximately 3,000 square feet. Down the driveway in the back is this garage with the apartment above. The apartment is only 576 square feet on the second floor. It's kind of a walkout because it's tucked into the hill, so you drive around and go in the back. You almost, when you're standing in Whiting Farm Road, you almost can't even see it. At some point, the previous owner did have an elderly person living here, and they had converted the garage space into living space because a caretaker was there, but that has been since removed. There's a vehicle again in the garage. So it's just the 576 square foot second floor that we're trying to get a zoning approved for an accessory apartment and an accessory structure. Actually, I believe that the accessory apartment in the accessory structure category wasn't always in the regs. I think that was one of the revisions somewhere along the way. And so this permit now makes sense.
Okay, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Preddy. Harry, I know that staff report was done by Mr. D'Amato. Do you want to summarize that for us?
Harry Smith, town planner. Sure. Let me start with a question though. Jim, how big is the house in terms of gross floor area?
The house is about 3,000.
Okay, great. So let me just whiz through the report quickly, share my screen. Okay, you should be able to see the report. As was noted, this is prepared by the town's consulting planner, Michael Lovato of Tyke Planning. It was an application for both accessory apartment approval and approval under section 6.8 for grading and earth removal activities, possibly submitted through an abundance of caution by Mr. Preddy. But in looking at it, there will be, in the end, no change in grade. They're just the actual, once the underground utilities are placed, the topsoil will just be put on top and then will just be brought right to the grade it was. So it really, in our minds, is exempt from 6.8. So moving on, there is, the 6.8 requirements regarding erosion control. There is a silt fence shown on site plan, so I think that's taken care of. I don't think there really needs to be an as-built. 6.8 really doesn't apply. Moving into section 7.4 with respect to the accessory apartment approval. This will be well under 30% of the gross floor area. So at 30%, it would still, the house was as small as about just under 2,000 square feet, it would still qualify. So with a gross floor area of the house well over, what was it, 3,000?
Yeah.
It certainly meets the requirement. Well under 900 square feet. The road excavation permit is typically handled after Planning and Zoning Commission approval. There has been a inland wetland and watercourse agency permit issued for the work, which I believe was done by staff. Again, a review of accessory apartment requirements. There's a number of requirements that the consulting planner believed they were in compliance with all of them. So we're suggesting here just a few conditions. And I would suggest some changes here just to bring it into line with how we've done similar approvals in the past and how the permitting process works in Branford. So I would suggest the preamble here be changed to read prior to the commencement of any work and prior to the issuance of a zoning permit or the zoning authorization for the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall demonstrate the following has been addressed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer, town planner, or his designee, just to cover our staffing situation at whatever time permit sought. And generally just going through the requirements here, road excavation permit, which is certainly, or determination that's not required, proven in the wetlands, that's already been issued, so that could be removed. And this is a requirement of the regulations for accessory apartments that a deed restriction be placed on Branford land records, which states that if rented, the apartment be rented at or below prices qualified the apartment as affordable housing per Connecticut General Statute, Section 830G. And requirement the deed restriction be reviewed by town council with evidence the recording of the executed deed is the version approved by town council. And then finally, in addition to the site plan of the total size of the apartment, and note added that the property is subject to deed restriction referenced above. That is suggestion of staff for approval, and it appears to comply with all the regulations.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Harry. Questions from commission members or staff before we open it up to the public? Hearing none, does any member of the public wish to comment? Evan, do you see any member of the public? I do see someone raising their hand.
Yes, before we get to Mr. Gaglia, I'd like to reiterate, anyone that would like to participate, please use the raise your hand function next to your name and the participant. Mr. Gaglia?
Thank you. My property is 24 Whiting Farm Road, directly to the north of the applicant, and we have no objection to what our neighbor chooses to do. I think he's done a great job on his property, taking care of it, and it's additive and it's appropriate. So for whatever it's worth, that's my wife and I's 2 cents there.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gaglia.
Certainly.
Evan, is there any other members of the public wish to comment? Evan, do you see anyone?
I do not see anyone at this time.
Great. Mr. Freddie, do you have any further comments?
No, that's I believe pretty simple. I'm glad to bring you something simple for a change compared to the other items. I appreciate your time and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freddie. Any further comments from commission members or staff? Hearing none, then we can close this matter as a public hearing, and this is here something we can take up in a little bit. Thank you, Mr. Reddy. So that closes our public hearing items. So we'll go down to our minutes of our May 20th meeting. I think there's still some other back ones that need to be reviewed, but we did get the May 20th meetings circulated to us in our package. And I don't know if everyone has had a chance to review that. And if so, it looks like we've got the 5 regular members that would be voting on this. So would someone want to make an appropriate motion with respect to the May 20th minute?
So moved, John Lust.
Motion by John to approve the May 20th minutes. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Second by Joe Chadwick. Any further discussion? All in favor? John Lust. John, are you in favor?
John Lust in favor.
Joe Chadwick, are you in favor?
Chadwick in favor.
Joe Vayuso. Joe, are you in favor?
Do I vote Chuck because I wasn't at that meeting?
You can technically can, but we can have someone vote for you too. I mean,
Joe Vayuso.
Okay. Believe it or not, you don't have to be in a meeting to approve minutes. Right. But Marcy Pelosi, are you in favor?
Yeah, that's news to me though. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you can abstain and we can get someone else, but I think you still can vote, believe it or not. The chair is also in favor. So the minutes are adopted. That brings us then to correspondence. Harry, any correspondence?
I'm Harry Smith, Town Planner. We do have a referral from Zoning Commission of the Town of North Branford, which is proposing to establish a new special permit use in the R40 zoning district to allow a multiple dwelling community, a condominium in quotes, on parcels containing a minimum of 5 acres and a maximum of 15 acres. The net buildable area is defined by the proposed, actually it's a maximum of 15 acres net buildable area as defined by the proposed new use regulation. So it looks like there'll be a public hearing on July 8th on this. And if there's any interest, let me know, and I'm happy to send whoever's interested a full copy of this. But it just appears to be providing a little more flexibility in terms of how they're developing a portion of their R40 zone.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Harry. Anything else?
No.
Great. So then let's take up some of the public hearing items. Let's start with items number 1, I guess number 1 and 2, but we'll start with 1, I guess, which is the special exception modification for the residential open space development. Harry, does it make a difference which one we do first? Do we do the special exception first?
I would think the special exception, that was the way the original approval was done. And I believe the subdivision references the special exception as having already been approved. So.
Okay. So then let's take up the special exception, which is item number 1. And Harry, you did review that with us, but I don't know, you can pull up the resolution. And Harry, you did go through this with us, and then maybe just take us to the second page that has the handwritten things.
Yeah, so it would be as proposed in the copies the commission received, with 2 additions to proposed condition 2, which would insert the word subslab between active and ventilation, and add at the end and agreed to by the applicant, and remove the specified 3rd condition.
Okay, Mr. Thank you, Harry. Any questions, comments from commission members? If not, then if someone want to make a motion to approve the application by adopting the draft resolution with the amendments, with the handwritten amendments as shown by Harry.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Marcy. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds the motion.
Second by Joe Chadwick. Any further discussion? All then in favor. John Lust, are you in favor?
John Lust in favor.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick in the affirmative.
Joe Biuso?
Joe Biuso can't vote.
Oh, Joe Biuso, because you missed one of the meetings. Well, who's up for?
Harry Smith, town planner. I believe Fred Russo was in attendance at all of the meetings. Is that correct, Fred?
Yes.
Okay.
Fred.
I think you're up.
Okay, Fred, you're up. Fred, how do you vote?
In favor.
Great, thanks, Fred. Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
And Chair is also in favor, so that application is approved. So let's go then to item number 2, which is the subdivision modification. And I know it's a different resolution, and it makes it references the special exception rather than in the preamble. But the second page, I believe, has the same changes. Is that correct, Harry?
Harry Smith, town planner. Yes, exactly correct.
Okay. Any questions or comments or thoughts from commission members? If someone want to make a motion to approve the application by adopting the draft resolution with the handwritten amendments written in by Harry.
Fred Russo, so moved.
Motion made by Fred. Is there a second?
Marcy, second.
Second by Marcy. Any further discussion? All in favor? John, are you in favor?
John Lust in favor.
Joe Chadwick.
Chadwick is in favor.
Fred.
Fred Russo in favor.
Marcy.
Marcy's in favor.
And Chair is also in favor. So that application is approved. That brings us then to item number, I believe it's item number 5, which is the 10 Buena Vista special exception for the artisan oversized accessory structure. And I believe, Evan, you had done that. I don't know if we can pull up the staff report on that one.
Evan Brining, assistant town planner. Thank you, Harry. We did not have any recommended conditions. However, we did have this one finding.
Okay, then there's any questions or comments or discussion from commission members? Then if someone wants to make a motion to approve the application with the findings set forth in the staff report.
So moved, Chadwick.
Motion made by Joe Chadwick. Is there a second?
John Lust, so second.
Okay, John, second. And I think, Joe Vayusa, you're backing on this one. We just started the public hearing on this. So, John, are you in favor?
John Lust in favor.
Joe Chadwick.
Chadwick in favor.
Joe Vayuso.
Joe Biuso in favor.
Marcy.
Marcy's in favor.
And the chair is also in favor, so that application is approved. Brings us into item number 6, which is the 18 Whiting Farm Road special exception for the accessory apartment. And Harry, I think you had reviewed the staff report on that. And you want to call that one up?
Sure, Harry Smith, town planner. The proposal is to approve the application with one condition. Again, during the hearing, I suggested a little bit of a wording change, which I can read again for the record. So we'd be replacing the preamble prior to the subsections A, B, C, and D with the following. Prior to the commencement of any work and prior to the issuance of a zoning permit or the zoning authorization for the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall demonstrate that the following has been addressed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer, town planner, or his designee. And the subsection A, B, C, and D would follow.
Thank you. So any comments, discussion from commission members? Now, does someone want to make a motion to approve the application with the amended preamble that Harry just read to us in lieu of what is written in the report, but otherwise adopt it with the conditions set forth in?
So moved by John Lust.
Motion made by John. Is there a second?
Joe Vayuso, second.
Second by Joe. Further discussion? All in favor? John, are you in favor?
John Lust in favor.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick is in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
Still in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
And Chair is also in favor. So I believe that completes the public hearings that we've heard this evening. That brings us then to old business. Number one of old business was the Branford Electric Railroad Association that we had tabled, and I understand we're still going to keep that one tabled. Is that correct, Harry?
Harry Smith, Town Planner, yes. An application at the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency is still pending. There also is, I believe, an issue with nailing down an easement that would allow the proposal to go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So item number one is tabled. Item number two is Syed Sami, the Oil Barons Inc., 49 Leeds Island Road. This again is something that needs a public hearing. And I understand we may schedule that for the next meeting, but there's still some deficiencies in the application.
Again, Harry Smith, Town Planner, yes, we're going to be reviewing that and identifying what's missing and getting in touch with the applicant to make sure it makes sense to proceed.
Okay, so item number two, we'll table that. We'll schedule that public hearing when appropriate. That brings us into new business. Item number one is Brenna Begley, applicant at 539 Main Street, site plan skin care spa. And what's the status with this one here?
Again, Harry Smith, Town Planner. I believe this came in fairly recently, and we're reviewing to make sure that it's going to require Planning and Zoning Commission approval. It's possible there was a prior site plan, and if they are in conformance with that and not making any exterior changes, it's possible they could simply require approval by the zoning enforcement officer, but we're going to double check that. And if it needs approved by the commission, we will probably schedule it for the next meeting on the 17th.
Great. Okay, so we'll table this item with the expectation to either be withdrawn if you don't need approval or heard at our next meeting. Item number two, 8th Avenue, special exception for two-family dwelling. And I understand we need a scheduled public hearing for that one, which we'll do when it's ready.
Yes.
Item number three, Amy Allen Rents Development, 365 East Main Street. And understand this also the recent development, and is this something we will proceed at our next meeting, or what's your expectation, or what is it? Why don't you summarize what this?
I might defer to Mr. Brining, who is reviewing this, but we just started looking into this. Essentially is we have a fast food restaurant, but I don't know, Evan, if you want to explain a little more fully.
Sure. Evan Brining, Assistant Town Planner. It is essentially a health food store with a partial amount of space dedicated to takeout only. I believe just a juice bar or smoothies, that sort of. In a particularly small unit compared to the rest of the property.
Right. And this is at the site where the exit 55, close to the redevelopment that we approved, the sort of commercial area right by the highway.
Right.
And
Okay.
Harry Smith, Town Planner, just for the record, I did approve a minor site plan for work that will actually be done by the developer of the former Days Inn property. They would essentially regularize site and make it much more look like a distinct ad site separated off from the adjoining development, although there will be an interconnection maintained. Piece of traffic flow and to keep people that may want to go from one to the other off of Route 1.
Thanks, Harry. Okay, so item number 4 under new business is 1025, 1091 West Main Street, this is an ATM at Bank of America, a lighting issue that they want to address, and there's some issues with that, but I don't know if you want to address that now or just we can take it up later.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little complicated to explain and probably unnecessary to do so at this point, so I'll just defer to the next meeting, and it would need a public hearing to go forward as they're proposing. There's something being proposed that, in our evaluation as staff, does not meet the zoning regulations, so we will schedule public hearings. The applicants requested one at this point.
Great. Okay, so that item number 4 will be tabled. The expectation will schedule a public hearing on that and see what happens. That brings us into other business, and we've got a number of bond releases and other things to go through. First item is a time extension request for Section 6.8 grading approval for 58 East Industrial Drive. Harry, what's going on there?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. There was an approval issued July 16th of 2020. Actually, that was the date of the letter. The commission voted to approve this on July 2nd, 2020. And this is a property all the way in the end of East Industrial Road, and it is beyond Rings End Lumber, all the way on the left after the, I believe it's Pin Oak, comes off at the end. The property owner had been essentially using the site to store construction equipment. They were notified they can't do that without approval. Getting a notice that my internet connection's unstable, so hopefully you can still hear me. Good. They did come in. Mr. Preddy prepared a plan for them. It was approved by the commission. There was a landscape architect involved as well. And as you may recall, Section 6.8 grading approvals, and this required one because it had work within 100 feet of an inland wetland, further beyond the end of East Industrial. So that 1 year period has expired. So they're requesting, will expire, excuse me, on July 2nd. They're requesting a 1 year extension of the approval. In the interim, however, the applicant's been out there, the property owner's been out there using the site. I do have several pictures. Our temporary zoning enforcement officer was out there today, took a couple of pictures. So I'll just show you quickly a couple of things, if you don't mind. Bear with me here. This is my, hopefully you can, actually you can't see that because I'd have to stop and share it. There's a picture, I can make a little bigger. So there's earth movement here. More of that. This photo. There's a lot of erosion, uncontrolled. I do have a picture of, if everyone see that quickly. This is tracking onto the road as well.
I can see it here.
How's that?
It's a little better, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to stop and share I'd have to stop and share every pop-up, unfortunately.
Harry, drag your bar up so we can see the whole image, or make the screen better.
I did that. I couldn't. Let's see. Is that better?
You hit the box in the upper right-hand corner so we can see your whole screen.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That's better. You're right. So you can see this one. This is the silt fence is buried. So I've discussed this with the inland wetlands agent, and I think she has discussed this with the property owner, and I believe he said he was going to try and at least install erosion and sedimentation control, which I think is important. But I think maybe before the commission issues an extension, I I'd like to have the opportunity to discuss those types of issues with the property owner and make sure he knows we're paying attention and really needs to do something about the condition of the site.
So is your recommendation we just table this now for you, give you a chance to speak with them or what?
It is, yes.
Okay. Okay, so that okay with everyone? We'll just table this and Gary will speak sternly to the guy. Okay. So then we will table A, the time extension request. And the second one, B, is a partial bond release for 159 Cherry Hill Road.
Okay. Harrisville Town Planner, our assistant planner, Evan Brining, has prepared several memos with respect to all of these bond releases. And I don't know, Evan, if you want to go through them or you want me to.
Evan Brining, assistant town planner. I can share my screen and we can take a look. Essentially, the two properties on Cherry Hill Road, 155 and 159, along with the two properties on Todd's Hill Road, 81 and 93, are all outstanding bonds for some landscaping. The property owner has not finished the driveway apron, so he has asked for a partial return of the cost for laying down the topsoil and seeding the properties, and having the town keep the $500 cost for the installation of the driveway aprons. And each of them have their own prices if you'd like me to go over those.
I think when we approve the motion, we'll have to know what we're voting on. So why don't we take them in order? Start with B, 159 Cherry Hill Road.
Gotcha. 159 Cherry Hill Road, in a response for a request for a partial return of the bond that was submitted in lieu of completion of the placement of topsoil and seeding of the property. The amount of $500 for the cost of installation of a driveway apron will remain, and the property has been seeded in accordance with the requirements of the regulations, and I recommend the return of the bond in the amount of $3,350.
Chuck Andrews, thank you, Evan. Is there a motion to approve the partial bond releases as explained by Evan in his memo?
Joe Vayuso approved.
Okay, motion made by Joe Vayuso. Is there a second?
Second by John Lust.
Second by John. Further discussion? All in favor? John, in favor?
John Lust in favor.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick is in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
Vayuso in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
Chair is also in favor. Next one is the bond release for 81 Todd's Hill Road. Do you have a memo on that one, Evan?
Yes. Let me make it a little bigger. In response for a request for a partial return of the bond that was submitted in lieu of completion for the placement of topsoil and seeding of the property, the amount of $500 for the cost of installation of a driveway apron will remain. The property has been seeded in accordance with the requirements of the regulations, and I recommend return of the bond in the amount of $3,347.50.
Thank you, Evan. Chuck Andrews, Chair. Is there a motion to approve the partial bond release as set forth in this memo for 81 Todd's Hill Road? Someone want to make that?
So moved, John Lust.
Motion by John. Is there a second?
Second, Joe Vayuso.
Second by Joe. Further discussion? All in favor? John Lust, are you in favor?
John Lust in favor.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick in favor.
Joe Vayuso? Joe Vayuso?
Still in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
And Chair is also in favor. Next one is 155 Cherry Hill Road.
In response for a request for the partial return of the bond that was submitted in lieu of completion of landscaping, the amount of $500 for the cost of installation of a driveway apron will remain. The property has been seeded in accordance with the requirements of the regulations, and I recommend return of the bond in the amount of $3,135.
Is there a motion to approve the partial bond release for 155 Cherry Hill Road as set forth in the memorandum that Evan just read?
So moved, John Lust.
We'll give the motion to John, and who was seconding?
Joe Vayuso, second.
Joe seconds. Further discussion, all in favor? John, you in favor?
John Lust in favor.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
Joe Vayuso in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
And chair is also in favor. Next one's 93 Todsville Road.
In response for a request for a partial return of the bond that was submitted in lieu of completion of placement of topsoil and seeding for the property. The amount of $500 for the cost of installation of a driveway apron will remain. The property has been seeded in accordance with the requirements and regulations, and I recommend return of the bond in the amount of $3,300.
Thank you, Chuck Anderson. Thank you, Evans. Is there a motion to approve the partial bond release from 93 Todsville Road in accordance with the memo that Evan just read? Somebody? Who wants to make that motion?
John Lust will make the motion.
That away, John. Who wants the second?
Joe Vayuso.
Joe second. Further discussion. All in favor? John, you in favor?
John Lust in favor.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick is in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
Vayuso in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
Chair's also in favor. And the last one is not a release, but an establishment for 8 Howard Avenue.
The owner of 8 Howe Avenue has requested the bond, the outstanding tree planting requirements of the January 28th, 2021 subdivision approval. It is recommended that the commission approve a bond in the amount of $805 for landscaping.
Their motion to approve the $805 bond for landscaping for 8 Howard Avenue is recommended by Evan in this staff report.
So moved by John Lust.
Motion made by John. Is there a second?
Second by Joe Vayuso.
Second by Joe. Further discussion. All in favor, John?
John Lust in favor.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick is in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
Joe in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
Chair is also in favor. Brings us to G, which is planner's report. Gary?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. I think we covered really some of the topic I was planning to discuss, which is what do we do next after July 1st with Planning and Zoning Commission meetings. Essentially, just to elaborate just a little bit, my understanding is there are at least one, maybe a couple of bills in the legislature that are pending resolution with the end of the session coming up the middle of next week. Hopefully, we'll have some resolution about what direction we've been given by the state to proceed. Their possibilities include proceeding with a hybrid meeting format somehow. Will be described in some future legislation to be passed hopefully next week. It could go back completely to in-person meetings. Some of the things being debated, I understand, include removing possibly the need to publish public hearing notices in newspapers and retain what we're doing currently, which is doing it on the town's website. They're also considering making permanent the posting of documents such as all application materials in hand 24 hours prior to the meeting, any comments by town staff. Right now, actually, probably know we're doing this in a Dropbox account, so that would eventually incur a cost to the town because we'd have to maintain that Dropbox account because I believe the website is not designed to hold that kind of number of documents. One thing we haven't done is started deleting some of the older materials, which probably need to do. We're accumulating quite a number of things on the Dropbox. So essentially, it's a wait and see kind of scenario. Out of an abundance of caution, we will probably, if we have public hearings, know that they're going to happen on the July 1st meeting. We'll get them in the paper prior to the meeting on the 17th. I can probably set some public hearings up to be opened and continued if necessary from the 17th to the 1st. That will avoid the need to publish them in the paper. And also try to handle as many things on the 17th or the second meeting in July as possible. Just so give the commission maximum flexibility in terms of, and maximum lead time in identifying where the meeting on the 1st will be held and how it will be held.
Chuck Andrews, Chair. Thank you, Harry. Harry, did you, I don't know if you're able to determine, are there any town restrictions on number of people in a meeting room or any of those sorts of?
There was nothing I could really gather, and I know other boards and talking to the folks in the First Selectman's office have been meeting with the general guidance being to spread chairs out as much as possible and minimize the number of people in the room in terms of presenters. We're not having, if we had 4 or 5 public hearings and 1 or 2 or more professional people presenting each application, to try and stage those people out of the meeting room in different locations. Let's say we're meeting at the firehouse again. We have the boardroom down the hall. There's the lobby and the second floor lobby and the first floor, to try and do that. And of course, we're spreading out the seats for the members of the particular board. In this case, it was the Board of Selectmen met last night. But there were only 3 members of that board, of course, and 1 staff person. So we'd have to try to spread ourselves out a little bit. But I have not asked everybody's vaccination status, and I don't intend to. But I will say, for the record, I'm fully vaccinated. So I hope many members of the commission are. But there's still, that's not a foolproof scenario. Certainly try to minimize the number of people and maximize separation of people seating at the table, should the commission decide to do an in-person meeting on the 1st subsequently. So there really is no hard, fast guidance. I mean, I was told that the situation is pretty fluid. That's one reason why there isn't. Things seem to be changing very quickly. And again, we really have no solid guidance from state yet on how we could proceed.
Sure. Thank you, Gary. Just want to open up to commission members. Guys, do you have a preference? What would people, if we have options, we may not, but what would you like? We had to go around. Let me just go around. John, do you have any preferences one way or the other?
Yes, I do. I'd like to get back to in-person meeting.
Thanks, John. Joe Chadwick. Joe, thoughts?
My feeling is that Zoom is a superior way to meet. We can exchange, show screens, look at documents up close. I don't feel like I've lost anything in terms of what members of the public have to say. Everybody seems to have their chance to speak. This is just convenient.
Thanks, Joe. Fred.
I kind of agree with both Johnny and Joe. I think that they both make very valid points. I think I'm kind of in between and would say that if we're going to go back to a full meeting, maybe we should just do it in September. Just arbitrarily decide. We're not going to be in session in August. We'll run out the next few meetings the way we're doing it, and then come September, whatever issues there are, either we're going to know more about them or they've all disappeared.
Thanks, Fred. Joe Bayuso.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards the in-person. I agree with Joe Chadwick. It's been going pretty well with Zoom, but personally, I prefer in-person. If we go that way, I have no problem with it.
Thanks, Joe. Marcy?
I'm pretty flexible, but I do have to say I almost prefer the Zoom meetings because I like to look things up on the computer while people are talking. I can listen and do the research at the same time. So for me, I find it more beneficial to have the computer in front of me. And I feel like if I were in a live setting, that would look a bit rude.
I understand, although that's probably, if there was ever an appeal, someone could say, wait a minute, if you're looking at evidence outside the record and all that.
Well, I'm looking at the record evidence.
Okay.
No, I'm not looking at things up independently on the internet. I'm looking at reading the application and, checking things a little bit more thoroughly.
Sure.
Zooming into maps and so forth.
No, absolutely. I've had multiple screens. I've had my laptop next to me and going on to the site and gone to the site and looked at the document. Okay, Massimo. Massimo, you're muted. Oops. Can we unmute Massimo? Oh, there he is.
There you go. You got me?
Yes, yeah, we agree.
I just am loving the fact that life is getting back to in the way it normally should be. So I'm for in person if that's the norm. I don't mind being in person. I don't mind being on Zoom either. But, you know, I like things to go back to normal, fully. I'm excited about you know, the mandate of masks and everything else, and whoever's vaccinated, keep it safe. And I just think that being in person is probably just a little bit more normal. So I'm with both sides, but I like the normality of being in person, guys.
Thanks, Massimo. Chuck in his chair. Hey, if I had to lean, I'm probably leaning more towards in person. I think there's a certain, I don't know, in-person interaction that I miss. I think there are efficiencies in not doing it, though. I get that. And particularly, you know, I think Marcy made a good point, and Joe made a good point as well. You can actually look up the things, so forth. But I sort of miss, I don't know, stuck in a room and so forth. What does staff think? You got any comments one way or the other?
Sure, Harry, so town planner, just to note, the way we do things now is only through executive order, and the state of emergency and the executive order is my understanding, slated to end at the end of this month. So it's possible whatever legislation comes forward may allow full remote meetings, it may allow only hybrid meetings and in-person meetings. I've seen one bill that did provide for hybrid meetings, and provided for us to, as I said, continue the Dropbox process, have documents available ahead of time online. But also there was one bill that wanted communities to provide essentially a location with equipment so that the public could remotely access a meeting, which I don't know if I really understood that, because you're basically asking the public to get into a room where it'd be next to other people utilizing a computer rather than go to the meeting room itself. So I don't know how that really benefits, other than maybe they would have, you know, also the requirement that we segregate it off into some kind of, you know, with plastic separations or something to make it, a situation with less people, less exposure possibly. So I don't know. I really have to wait to see what's going to come forward. We'll try to get that out to the commission as soon as we hear something. My preference probably would be back to regular meetings in person. I will note that, you know, a little bit of effort on the part of Evan and myself, and particularly Michelle, to get all the documents into the Dropbox. And it also is provides a little less flexibility if we're doing something like preparing a resolution. We have to work things out with an applicant, for example, you know, as soon as we can, and essentially 24 hours before the meeting. The way we did this last round with Gould Lane, it was handwritten changes and, you know, verbal suggestions of some modifications. But I don't really think that requirement's going to go away. And my take would be that, you know, and I think it's useful. I think it's useful to members of the public to have the ability to access materials, and also members of the commission. Apparently. So that's probably going to stay, and we'll just have to see what happens. Legislation.
So we'll be deciding this, I guess, at our next meeting. We'll make the call. At that time, we should know what the legislation is, and then we'll make the call then. So, you know, think about it, and hopefully, you know, Harry, you can give us some advance notice as to what the law is before the meeting.
Yeah. I will note also there's several other pieces of legislation. One thing that's already been approved, you may be aware of, is House Bill 6107 for zoning and housing reform. And just touch on a couple of things that are contained in the bill, and I'll send a synopsis around attached to an email for everyone. But it does require planning commissioners that receive a member 4 hours of training every year. It changes some wording in the statute and eliminates the use of the word character of a community, replaces that with physical site characteristics. I don't think I am aware of, the commission has based too many decisions on failure to sufficiently address or protect character of a community. It reinforces a municipality's obligation to federally further the purposes of the Federal Fair Housing Act. Requires municipalities to provide for the development of varied housing types. I think we can already do that. It creates a state level commission charged with developing guidance on how municipalities can comply with the mandated local affordable housing plans are in process here in Branford. It does reorganize the state's zoning enabling act quite a bit. We'll get into that more later. And I think one of the most significant changes is it permits, as of right, one accessory apartment on each property with a single family house statewide. It would eliminate the special exception requirement for accessory apartments. But it does allow a process for municipalities to opt out, allowing accessory apartments, would require a 2/3 majority vote by both the Planning and Zoning Commission and the town's legislative body, which is the representative town meeting. So I'll get more information on this out to you. And anything else that we see that's has been passed and adopted into law at the end of the legislative session coming up. But this has been a really active session. And several other proposals have brought forward and not made it, but we won't really know until the dust settles next week.
Eric, can I ask a question? Marcy, can I ask a question about that accessory? I understand what they're trying to do with having an accessory apartment without the special exception, but is there any consideration for sizes of lots and bulk requirements, given that we have a lot of very undersized lots in this town?
Right. That's a good point. I know of.
I'll go through it a little more detail, but as far as the summary.
Gary, you just got muted.
I think I hit you by mistake.
Oh, it's okay.
Sorry, I meant to mute myself.
Not a problem. I don't know is the answer, I guess. So we'll look into that more closely. It does provide for accessory apartments that are created by a municipality after the legislation is in effect to not count as housing units in the town for the purposes of addressing the 10% affordable housing standard. In other words, you have a ratio of number of affordable housing units, deed restricted, so forth, divided by the number of units in the community. So what it's saying is that affordable housing units will not be counted towards a number of housing units in the community for the purposes of complying with the affordable housing 10%, which we are nowhere near close to. We're at like 3.3 or something. So I think that's beneficial, but it doesn't seem, though it may, allow the process the commission has been going through, which is requiring every accessory apartment unit to be an affordable unit, according to the definition in 830G. I'm not clear that
would require that, you're saying?
I'm not sure that it precludes that or would allow that to continue to be done by commission.
Well, with the opt-out provision, is there a deadline when you have to opt out if you want to opt out?
I believe there is. I can't recall what that is. I'd have to get into the specifics of that, but I think you've got maybe 90 days or something like that.
Okay.
I'll look into that.
I think that'll be an issue we'll want to consider. That'll be the choice. So whatever the laws we have to obey, but if they give us an opt-out, we decide whether we want to opt out. My general understanding, for those like Joe Iuzzo and myself and other people who've been around forever, I remember when we adopted the accessory apartment regulation back when Shirley Rasmussen was our planner back in the 90s. And, we put certain limitations on it. We did make it a special exception. And I can't recall any that we've denied, actually. And the idea of a special exception versus as of right, it means you got to notify the neighbors. They have the right to hear about it. And there's a chance, I don't know if there's some landscaping issues or something like that it's a chance for them to comment. So the issue, as of right, I assume we could still require a site plan, but I don't know. You would just would just happen, or I don't know, if it would just be a zoning permit. So anyway, that'll be a question that I think will be up for us because we have a deadline, because it would have to be approved by 2/3 of us and then 2/3 of, I don't know if the legislative body is the RTM, probably, right?
I would believe so, yeah.
Okay, so we'll have to.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can opt out and opt back in. Let's say if you opt out and then let the dust settle and, maybe there's more clarity about how much you can include in a regulation in terms of provisions, even though it's not a special exception, maybe you can include standards.
Well, if you opt out, you can just amend your regulations to make it as of right. You wouldn't opt in. I mean, I would just, it doesn't preclude you from adopting whatever regulations you want, I assume. Oh. That's what would be my take, is that it's a mandate. You can't adopt any, unless you opt out, you must do X. If we opt out, then we may do X, but don't have to. So I don't know. We got to read it and figure out what it is, but I think
do more research.
Yeah, we may have a choice, and it may be other bodies, and it may get, I don't know. I assume there may be more political.
But again, politically, isn't this just to get more housing for, affordability standpoints for the numbers? And, I'm all for that. And I have I think a community like ours with accessible structures is fine, maybe in Greenwich, maybe not so much. But, I think my issue is that the way they count accessible structures now is, I think, skewed. So, I get a little frustrated with that. I know I sound like a broken record, but.
Yeah. I don't think this is necessarily affordable. A little bit. It's a sense of supply that we ought to, make more housing. It's sort of a, we got to make housing more cheaper, more inexpensive, and allow property owners to do it. I mean, what the implication would be, hey, I bought a single family house. You're essentially saying now I can do a duplex as of right. Because they, and does that mess people up? That's why my understanding is we have a special exception to at least give the neighbors an opportunity to comment on it.
Well, and regardless of lot size.
Yeah. And I don't even know for what it, I got to look and see if there's some zones where we don't allow it at all. And so forth. So those are other questions. Right. You raise a good point. What do we have 4,000 square foot lots?
Right.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Right now, it's only in the R3, the R4, and the R5 that it's allowed. It's not allowed in the R1, R2.
Right.
But you could look at it with two perspectives. You could say, bigger lots have the space to fit a detached structure with an apartment over the garage, or you could look at it as smaller lots were designed to be more urbanized and can afford greater density. So yeah. I can see pros and cons, but I wouldn't want to remove our ability to look at it on a case-by-case basis or necessarily have a lot of response.
That's exactly the rub. I think that's exactly the rub. In some situations, fine. It depends on the property and the specifics of the context.
Right.
That's what the special exception process is really designed to deal with.
Yeah. My take, it was a solution. It's addressed. It says you got to allow them as a right. I mean, I don't think that's been a problem. It's suggesting that people, because they've allowed them only by special exception, they're going to deny them. They have this discretionary criteria. And that hasn't been my experience. The public, by special exception, you got to give notice to your neighbors. It forces you to be good to your neighbors, let them know what's going on, and to work things out in advance if there's going to be a problem. So we saw tonight. The guy must have told his neighbor, because the neighbor showed up and said, hey, I like Joe. He's great and whatever. So, I mean, and we want to foster that. I mean, that's kind of my initial thing, but I don't know.
Chuck, I agree with you. And also, I think we have to take into consideration, I mean, there's some properties that have septic and wells that are permitted. I mean, if they have, the right to just build another apartment, how are they going to house septic wells and support that?
Yeah, that may stop at any event. I mean, I think they still have to comply with whatever the health code is.
We have to really think about this. What comes to mind real fast? We have so many summer cottages that are being converted to year-round homes. Those summer cottages are barely 10 feet apart sometimes, 15 feet apart. Some of these neighborhoods, really small, short feet. Branford Cove, and all these different areas. We have a lot of small properties because of the coastline. We have to kind of really look at things as much as we can, where some places it just doesn't fit. My opinion.
And I think it also, challenges the fact where, like, if it's a 2-bed accessory apartment, or how many more kids in our schools support? I think that's a big factor. I mean, there's a lot of people here, and schools are only so big, and if every piece of property could have another apartment, and that brings in, even 50% more children going to our schools, we won't be able to support that. That's another consideration, I feel.
And along with the apartment, you've got cars, and
Right.
with the cars.
Doesn't make sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's more to the bill too. I mean, there's something about parking that limits the number of parking spaces that are required per type of housing unit as well. But I'll give you a full report when I've got a full understanding, and certainly send a little more detailed summary around, and take this up the next meeting, I would imagine.
It's
Yeah.
so scary.
Clearly done from a political perspective, not a planning and zoning.
It was thrown together rather quickly, is my understanding, cobbled together from pieces of other bills that were proposed.
Mm.
It's so important to be thrown together, I feel.
It's a shame.
Okie doke. Anything else, Terry?
No, thank you.
Okay. Anything else, anyone?
Chuck, Fred Rousseau.
Yes, Fred.
I just want to say congratulations on the time.
Look at this. It's there like hour and a half.
I don't know what I'm going to do with the next 2 hours. I'm
right.
lost.
I know. I got free time. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, if you don't schedule the items, you don't take too long.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Well,
We just say no. That's what we did. But
yeah, we got Buckley. We got some big ones coming. Also.
Yeah.
Well, great. Anything else from anyone?
I move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn by Marcy. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Second by Joe. Further discussion. John, you in favor?
John Lust in favor.
Joe Chadwick.
Chadwick is in favor.
Joe Viuzzo.
Go in favor.
Marcy.
Marcy's in favor.
Chair's also in favor, so we are adjourned.
You're adjourned.
Have a great night,
Good
everybody.
night, everyone.
thanks, everyone.
Night.
Good night.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.